Hi there, my name is Abu, and in the next couple of videos, I'm going to show you how to build modern React applications. So first things first, we need to install Node, which is going to act as our local server. So go to Google, search for Node, head over to the official Node.js website. So then you download Node, recommended for most users. It should automatically detect your operating system and download what's required for you. And the installation is really basic. I have installed it already, so I won't really go and install it again. And also Node will be our package manager. And since React is a library, we have to install it using npm, which is Node package manager. So this also helps us with that. And the next thing, after installing Node, you also want to install React. So on Google, search for ReactJS and open the official React website. Also in this tutorial, I'm going to show you how to use documentation, official documentation. So on the React official website, you can see it introduces you to React. It tells you React is a JavaScript library for building user interfaces, which we are going to do. And when we get started, you can read through this if you want, but I'm gonna jump right into creating a new React app. So I'll go to create new React app, and you can read through this if you want. My interest is down here, where I want us to create our first React application. So these are the instructions, and it's telling you here, you'll need to have Node greater than 10.16 and npm greater than 5.6. So if you check on Node, the one you must have installed at the time of recording this video is 14.17. Maybe by now yours should be a little bit higher. So it's telling us we need to run this on our terminal, npx create React app, and then you give your application a name. So I'll open my terminal and I'll type in npx create React app, and I'm going to call mine app. You can give it any name of your wildest fantasies, but mine, I'm just going to call it app, and enter. So this should execute and start installing React application. So while this is installing, let me talk about the code editor that we're going to use. So there are many code editors out there, from Sublime to Atom, but my favorite, and the one I'm going to use for the rest of these videos, is the Microsoft VS Code. Basically because it has so many extensions that we can add on it, and it will make our life really, really easy as a developer, and you will see. And I'll also show you which extensions you're going to need to make your life really, really easy. So while this is installing, let's also download the Microsoft VS Code. So head over to Google and search for VS Code download, and go to the official website and download it from there. I have it installed already, so you can go ahead and download it and install it on your computer, because this is what you're going to use for the rest of this course. So I'm going to pause this video for now until this completes installing, and I'll come back when this is done. See you then. So now that the installation is complete, let's try to run our first React application. So first things first, we have to go into that directory where we install the application. And as it's saying here, we suggest you begin by typing cd app, which is moving into that directory called app, as you can see. And now let's type npm start to run our development server, which will start our React application. Out of the box, this is how it looks like. And we're going to change most of this, of course, but out of the box, this is how it looks exactly. And now, once you've installed your VS Code on your computer, time to open this and see exactly how it looks like. So this is my VS Code, and this is how everything looks like. And now I'm going to open the folder. There are options here. You can open a file, you can create a new file, open a file, but I want to open a folder. So I want to open the application, and the one I created is here. It's called app, and you can just try to go to the directory where you installed the React application. In case of mine, I've installed it here. I found it already, and select the folder, and here we go. And a couple of things to look at, of course. On the left panel here, we have the directories that comes with React application out of the box. Let's get started by finding out what these are. So package.json, this here just tells the React application what to do when you run specific commands. As you can see, like here, these are the scripts. When we ran npm start, this is the script that runs when we run npm build. Although we haven't used this one yet, but this will be the script that runs. But so far, this is what we're going to use. And up here, it tells you the dependencies that have been installed. The dependencies are just what the application needs to run smoothly. You'll see we shall add more dependencies as we go on, and this dependencies part is going to grow bigger and bigger and bigger. And the rest of this, as you can see, the browsers you can run this on, and yeah, the rest of this you don't really have to worry about. And git ignore, if you know a little bit of git and source control, basically this git ignore folder, when you're pushing your application to your GitHub repository, this git ignore tells Git which files or folders to ignore. And now the next folder we shall look at is public. I want you to notice a few things here in public. So under public, we have, this is the fav icon, of course. If you go back to your browser, you should see this when you open the tab up there. And obviously these are the logo, the one you see up here, and you have another logo here, a little bit bigger than the other one. And the most important thing I want you to look at is this one here. Now, React is a single page application, meaning that there's only one HTML file in your entire application. I mean, this is really, really interesting. So meaning that when you run this application, let's say our application had a navigation bar up here, and then we can navigate to contact, or we can navigate to about us page, or any other page that we have up here. In a regular web application, we would have to create all these HTML pages for every other page. That means contact.html, we have about.html, and so on and so on and so on. But React uses this concept of single page application, which means this page is loaded just once, and everything else is a component that is automatically re-rendered to display specific parts of the website. For example, the React website, so this is only one page that we have, and if we go to tutorial, it automatically renders the tutorial component. And we can go to blog, everything is a component, and if you notice, this page doesn't reload at all. The page doesn't reload, it just renders these different components. And don't worry about what a component is, and I will explain to you what components are. But when you hear about single page application, this right here is the single page that we're talking about. And obviously we have the title here, that shows up on the tab when you open the tab of your application. And so what is happening to display this that we have here? So like I said, this is a component that is being rendered, and this is what is inside that component that is being rendered. Now, if you notice down here, div id root, this is what we have here. Now, if you know a little bit of jQuery, you should realize that this is coming from a jQuery element that I'm going to show you how exactly it works. Now, let's open the source folder. So basically, I'm also trying to explain the flow of a React application. So first and foremost, this single page loads this index.html, which is the single page. It loads, and then it calls this ID root up here. Now, when you open the source directory, you will see index.js. So when I open index.js, you'll see a couple of things here. Don't worry about most of this for now. I'll explain all of them. I want you to look at down here what is being rendered. So this is the React DOM, and it's rendering this. So these are the components that are being rendered, and I want you to look at this here. Document.getElementById root. This is what the HTML is pointing to. This is the root that HTML is pointing to over here. For example, if I change this to Abu and I save this, our application is going to break. So when I reload this page, our application is going to break. It's saying error, target container is not a DOM element. But to fix this, I can either change this name back to root, or I can go back to index.html and I change this to Abu and save this. So when I come back to my application, what do you know? This is now working because this ID Abu is now the same as the ID that is being rendered in the React DOM. So by convention, this is called root. I'll just change this back to root and come back to my HTML and also change this to root and save that. Our application should be working. So from here, this is where the main component gets rendered. And the main component, if you realize, it's called app component. And this app component is being imported from the same directory. I will explain what this dot and / means when we start building our own components. But this is the module that is being rendered in the React DOM. Now, when you open app.js, you should see some familiar things. For example, edit, code, and save to reload. So when I come back to my application, my website, you should see edit, source app.js, and save to reload. So it's telling you should edit this file here, app.js, and then you save it to reload. So every time you save something, the development server automatically reloads this, and you don't need to come and reload it every time. So I will just change this for now. Let's change this to something. I'm going to say welcome to my first React application. So when I save this, go back to my browser, what do you know? Automatically, the development server waits for any changes in your application, and it automatically reloads your application and shows you what you have done. So welcome to my first React application. That's what I just did here. And a couple of things to look at. So one, this is a div from HTML. We know what a div is. We know what a header is. We know what an image is, paragraph. This is an anchor tag. So and so on and so on and so on and so on. But before we start doing anything, I want us to install a few extensions that will make our life very, very, very easy. First and foremost, I want you to notice this div. This is the opening tag for the div and the closing tag for the div. Normally, when you're creating or editing a tag, you have to come up here and change something and then come down and change something again. But if you realize, if I try to add something here, I want you to watch the closing tag. It automatically adds for me something on my closing tag. So that is an extension that you can add on when you have VS Code. That extension is called auto rename tag, this one. So and as you can see, it's very, very popular. It has about 5 million downloads. So I would really advise you to start by downloading and installing this auto rename tag. The next extension I want you to install is called ES7 React Redux GraphQL snippets. So you'll see how this will come in handy as we go on. So as you can see, it's also very popular. It has about 2 million installs at the time of recording this video. And please go ahead and install this extension as well. I will explain to you how and where we are going to use it. The next extension I want you to install is this one here, highlight matching tags. So time to get our hands dirty on React. Now, like I said, this is the main component that is being rendered in the React DOM, and whereby it will be rendered on the HTML file, the single page. So what exactly is going on here? Now, we are importing a couple of things. We're importing the logo, obviously the logo, which is the source here of this image. That is what we're importing. And we're also importing app.css. And obviously, I know by now everybody knows CSS, which is the cascading styling sheets. I mean, basically, this is used for styling your web applications. And if I open app.css, which is this one here, we should see what we are used to. I'm sure by now most of you should know a bit of CSS. So this is the styling. But I want you to notice that in ordinary HTML, when you're calling a class, a CSS class, you just say class equals to app.js. But remember, this is called JSX. It's a bit of JavaScript in HTML, meaning that if I wrote class like this, I want you to really understand this. This is not HTML. It looks like HTML, but it is not HTML. It's JSX, meaning that it's basically JavaScript, but it's not HTML. So if I wrote class like this, remember in JavaScript, class is a reserved word. You cannot use it unless you're creating a class. So when I'm calling this app class for my CSS, if I'm calling a class like this to style my specific tag like that, for this case, this div, I can't say class. Remember, this is not HTML. This is JSX. As you can see up there, this is a JSX attribute with a class string. So I cannot use class because class is a reserved word. As you notice, even here on the header, it's called class name, and the image is class name for styling it, and the anchor tag is also they use class name for styling it. Okay, now I'm just gonna change this back to class name because we cannot use class since it's a reserved JavaScript word. Anyway, you'll see how all this comes about and how it all works out. But for now, let's go ahead and see what happens. So this is the style, if you notice up here, and it's what is styling everything that we have here. That is basically CSS. But in this course, I'm going to show you the modern way of building or styling this application using React Bootstrap. So I don't want us to worry so much about styling because this is CSS is a whole other class of its own. So we shall use React Bootstrap, which is really, really easy. So we shall not worry about styling here. So the first thing I'm going to do is I want to have a clean and fresh React app. So I'm just gonna delete this and I'm gonna remove this all the way up there, and I'm gonna remove the styling also. We don't need it. I want us to have a clean and fresh looking application. My React. I'm gonna put this in the paragraph and say my React app. So I'm gonna save this, and this is my clean looking React application. No styling, no nothing. It's basically a canvas, our playground where we are going to use it to build this React application. I just realized I misspelled something here. So it's React like that. So this is our first component. Like I told you before, everything in React is a component. Like this first page here the whole thing is a component. There's only one page, one HTML page, and everything is a component. So we have a few properties of a component. First, it can be a function component. Before, we used to make class-based components, but the modern way of writing React application is by using function-based components. The reason why, we use React hooks these days. React hooks are very popular. Everybody is using React hooks, and high chance is that in your next application or in your next project that you're going to build or in the next project that you're going to be asked to continue and build with the team, high chance is they're using function-based components, and React hooks do not work in class-based components. So we shall not waste our time and study class-based components. We shall go straight to using function-based components. So this is my React function app. This is the name of the application, of course. And then you have to export it as a default export. This export just means that in this module, if this export wasn't here, let me show you. When I comment this out, again, the shortcut for commenting in VS Code is Control and / like that. And I'm going to save this. Also, let me zoom this in a little bit so you can see clearly. If I comment this out, our application is going to fail. Save this. When we come back, you should see app does not contain a default export. Okay. That is because we did not export this component as a default export. But when I put this back, again, to remove the comment, Control + /, and I'm going to save this, and our application should render and it should run. Okay, so we shall understand more about how this importation works from the different modules, but let's not worry about it right now. So back to app.js, like I said, every function, every component, for this case, we're going to use function components. Every function component has to return something that is going to be rendered. In this case, this is returning this JSX code. Again, it looks like HTML, but it's not HTML, it's JSX. It returns this, my React app, that is going to be rendered in our browser. We can start simple here. We can create our very first component. So up here, I will use the ES6 syntax for creating these components. Again, all along the way, I'm going to explain where I will be using the ES6 syntax, and I will explain the modern way of writing ES6 syntax. So for example, I want to create a function that will be our very first component that we're going to create. Again, this is a component. Remember, this app.js is a module. It's not the component. The component is this app, function app all the way here. This is the component. The whole file is a module. So I want to create my first component. So again, ES6 syntax. So constant, and I'm going to name my component. I'm going to call it first component equal to parenthesis. It's not taking any parameters, and this is the ES6 syntax, like that. It has to return something. Every component has to return something. So what is it returning? I'm going to write my JSX code here. So div, I'm going to have another div here, and maybe I'll have a paragraph inside this div and say my first component, like that. So I'm going to save this. Back to my browser, I'm going to reload, and nothing is happening. So you might ask yourself, why isn't this working? And yet I have put here my very first component, but it's not working. The reason is, remember, it's only this component that has been registered in the React DOM here, which is this one here. So our application does not know what this first component is. It has no idea what this is. So in order for this to be rendered on our web application, we have to call it, or we have to register it in the app component, this one here, the one that's being rendered in our React DOM. So up here in the return statement, we are going to call first component like that, self-closing tag. Remember, if I put it here like this, there's an error, and the error saying JSX, if you read here, JSX expressions must have one parent element. That means if I start with a div like this, I can't put anything outside this div. That means this first component has to be inside this div. So I'm gonna cut it from here, and inside the div, I'm gonna paste it there. So when I save this, you should expect this to run in your browser, right? But when I reload this, it's not really running. Now, I know when you're creating functions, there's a rule about JavaScript. When you're creating functions, by convention, the first letter should be lowercase letter. But in React, components by convention should have uppercase letters to begin with. So if I change this back to uppercase letter and put this uppercase letter also down here, and I save it, our component should run. Now back to the browser, and you reload this, we have an error. It's telling us first component, nothing was returned from the render. Also, this is a good way of debugging your code. Normally, when something fails, everybody's like, oh, my code has failed, you run to Google, do this and that. But React has a debugger built inside of it. So normally it tells you where the problem is. So in this case, it's telling us nothing was returned from render. This usually means a return statement is missing, or to render nothing, return null. So this is it. Back to our application. In first component, like I said, every component should contain a return statement, and this is what is going to be rendered in our web application. So here we don't have a return statement. Now all we need to do is add the return statement like that, and put everything else in this parenthesis. So open parenthesis up there, close it down here, and I'm gonna save this. Back to application. What do you know? We have my first component. It's really, really easy and very interesting. All you need to understand is the flow of how everything here works. So this is my first component, and you can put this anywhere you want. You can decide you want it under my React app. So I'm going to show you something really, really cool in VS Code. If I want to move this line of code anywhere, above or below, it doesn't matter. I just put my cursor on that line, and I hold the Alt key and use the down arrow. I can take this anywhere I want, or the up arrow to move it back up. So hold Alt and under React, and I'll save this. Back to my application, you should see this one goes below my React application. Now, another thing you should have noticed is when I move this first React application, and it's somewhere, it doesn't look really nice up here, as you can see, because it's supposed to be in line with this paragraph here. So if I save this, you can see automatically my code is formatted, and this moves where it's supposed to be. This is done by an extension called Prettier. So when you go back to extensions, just search for Prettier, and as you can see, Prettier code formatter. And as you can see, it's very, very popular. It has 13 million downloads. So please download this code formatter. It's really, really great, so that your code doesn't have to be disorganized. I want you to head over to File and Preferences, head over to Settings, and then open the JSON, this one, and then head over to the part where it's telling you edit, editor, format on save, and then give it true. So this means that anytime you save, you press Ctrl S to save your work, and this Prettier will automatically reformat your code. This is all this line means. If this line doesn't exist, you can just add it For example, if this line wasn't existing, I can just come. Remember, this is JSON. So an editor, and VS Code is very, very intelligent. It will try to finish up your statements. So editor, and then I can just start typing on save. That's the one I want. I can go to wherever I want, but I want format on save. Press enter. By default is false, so just add this to true, like that, and I'll save it. So save that file. You don't need it anymore. You can close it, close settings, close this after installing that. So again, Alt, up arrow. When I bring it back down, Control S, automatically formats my code, which looks very, 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 very nice. Now, your first assignment is create a component of your choice. Give it any name of your choice. You can create 1 or 2 or 3 components and register that component in this main component app and make sure that it is working. Spend about 2 to 3 minutes on this and come back and look at my solution. So my solution, I'm going to create my second component. So constant second component. Again, remember to give your component names that you're going to remember. If it's a component, call it second component or product component or something component. You don't want to have your names all over the place and you remember what this is for. So again, JSX, I'll create my div here and create my paragraph here. Again, this is Emmet. Emmet should come automatically with VS Code. That's why I didn't mention you need to install the Emmet extension. It should come automatically. Emmet, basically, it automatically gives you the opening and closing tag of this HTML tags. So if I have a paragraph, I just type in P, and when I press enter, it automatically gives me the opening and closing tag. But remember, this is not HTML. I want to emphasize this. This is not HTML. This is JSX. So my second component, and I'll just create one more constant. Again, this is ES6, third component. Sorry, doesn't take any parameters, and return. So div, just type in div, Emmet will pick up and automatically give you the opening and closing tag. So I need a paragraph again here, opening and closing tag, and my third component, like that. So I'm gonna save that. Again, obviously this has not been registered in the application, so nothing will happen there. So when I come here, I want to have below this, then again, VS Code is very intelligent. As soon as I open this opening and closing tag, it sort of gives you options of what you might want to do. So I have my components already lined up for me. And again, if I want to put HTML tags, I have all of them lined up for me. So basically, I want second component. I don't have to type it all. Press enter. And this is a self-closing tag. Again, you can put opening and closing tag the same. Let's see with third component. But you can also use the self-closing tag, but it will still work. As you can see, this is my third component. I also just realized that I don't have a T here, so this was going to fail. Again, I want you to notice opening tag, closing tag. When I change something here, this T is going to be added there. That's because of the extension that we installed. So when I save this back to my application, I should see my second component, my third component. So that was a basic introduction. In the next video, we are going to go further with these components and see what you can do more with these components. See you then.